Okay, good morning. Time for flow. Let me just make sure my phone is on airplane. It is. Okay. So today we'll start on our stomachs. So you'll come down to lying down onto your stomach. If you're comfortable stacking the hands, one hand on top of the other and resting the forehead down, do it this way because you're actually in a slight back bend when you do it this way, and you start to get a light opening on the upper body, but you can just relax. So legs can relax, which often means the ankles roll out and the big toes start to point toward one another. You could start to move the forehead side to side if you need a little bit of movement to start to drop into your practice in order to come to your breath. So taking a deep breath in through the nose and back out through the nose. 2 more like that. Deep breath in and slow breath out. Deep breath in through the nose and back out. Keep going on your own with your Ujjayi breath. Then start to lift the head. We'll get into the shoulders. So you'll cactus the arms, get that left elbow in line with the left shoulder. You can bring the feet all the way together, turn the head to the right. So you're resting the left side of the head down on the mat. Right hand can come underneath the right shoulder. Go slow, start to roll back onto this left shoulder. And this is a deep opening for the left shoulder, left side chest. So take it easy. Don't feel like you have to go too far in, just a place that feels like you're getting an opening, one that you can continue on with your Ujjayi breath. And that top foot can go back behind you. It can go forward in front of you, whichever one helps you stay in the shape a little easier. And sometimes that means just keeping the feet stacked. It depends really on where the hips end up. And start to come back onto your stomach, and we'll switch sides. So right elbow in line with the right shoulder, left hand on the mat underneath the left shoulder, turn the head to the left, rest the right side of the head on the mat, and then slowly start to roll back onto the right hip, feeling your way into the right side shoulder and chest opening. And you'll come back onto your stomach. Bring the forearms underneath you. Just bring the left forearm in, bend the right leg, reach back, grab for the right foot. Sometimes the right knee wants to go way out to the right. Keep it right underneath the hip. Chest can stay a little bit lifted since we're trying to warm up the upper body. You can also bring the head down onto the forearm, but you'll lose that back bend. So if it's too hard to keep the chest lifted, bring the head down. But if you can easily keep the chest lifted, the left forearm underneath you for support, go for that. And then play with bringing that right foot in toward the glute. So you bend the right elbow. You feel a nice quad stretch. And now play with kicking the right foot away from you, straightening the arm, getting into the right shoulder, reaching the chest forward. Don't deepen the back bend too much. We're still starting out, tailbones pointing toward the back of the mat, not up toward the sky. And gently release that right foot. Bring the right forearm in front of the face, bend the left leg. See if you can reach for that left foot. Make sure the left knee is pointing straight back, not out to the left. Keep the chest lifted, heart going forward, gaze down the bridge of the nose, and then play with bringing that left foot in toward the glute. Left elbow bends, probably. Now start to kick the foot into the hand back into the foot till the arm starts to straighten a little bit more. Chest is reaching forward. Don't go too deep with this back bend. You're not going as far in as you possibly can. Keep it part, you're just going in part of the way. So we don't make the pose too big too soon. Gently release that left foot. Come to Sphinx pose. So now both forearms down on the mat. Look at the elbows. Make sure they're right underneath the shoulders so that you can lift the chest. Chest is reaching forward, tops of the feet pressing down on the mat. Feet are hip width distance apart. Looking down the bridge of the nose. Belly's lifting away from the mat and tailbone pointing back toward the heels. So you keep that length in the lower back. Then looking down at the mat, keep the chest lifted, tuck the toes underneath you, fire up the legs. So feel like all the muscles in the legs are engaged. And then those outer hips, hug those in toward the midline. You're pressing down as hard as you can into the forearms and the hands. As you keep reaching the chest forward, hug the belly in. Now lift the hips up, coming into your forearm plank. Everything's still working. Breath is still going in and out through the nose, up and down the back of the throat. One hand at a time, plank pose. Downward facing dog. Lift the hips up and back. So you're pushing the mat away from you. Shoulders are going up toward the hips, and that gives you more space in the neck. Legs, we haven't done much with. So if you want to pedal out the feet to open up the calves, you can do that. You could also widen this stance so the feet go toward the edges of the mat. But maybe feeling a little bit more heat in the upper body than you typically do in your first downward facing dog. Lift the right leg up and back. Try not to open up that right hip. So that means all 5 toes point straight down. Step the right foot through all the way up between the hands, coming into a runner's lunge. And you know, if the foot just goes part of the way, we grab the ankle and we move the whole thing forward with the hand. Set the back knee down. Up to you if you keep the toes tucked or untucked back there. And then bring the arms back behind you. Interlace the fingers, lift and spread the chest, point the knuckles back. So now you're getting into the top of the left hip. It's almost like you're trying to lift that left hip bone up and lengthen the quad down toward the mat. Right heel, you're pressing it into the mat so you have some stability in the legs, almost like you're bringing it in toward the body. Then slowly bring the hands back down to the mat. You can come up onto the fingertips for this one. Even blocks would work. Tuck the back toes, lift the back knee, straighten the front leg, modified pyramid pose. So hands can walk in toward the body. You might feel this right away in the backside of the right leg. If that's the case, keep bringing the hands in or lift the hands up on blocks. But you're staying high on the ball of the back foot, especially for this first version of this pose. Then inhale forward to your lunge, plant the hands, step back to downward facing dog. Lift the left leg up and back, three-legged down dog. So you're lifting from the inner left thigh. Step the left foot all the way through. So you're trying to bring the knee up toward the nose, scoop the belly around the spine. Left foot steps up. Right knee comes down gently. Interlacing the fingers behind the back, one finger over this time. So the unusual way. Kind of feels like you're holding someone else's hand. Shoulders away from the ears, point the knuckles back, lift the chest, and then see where that right hip is. Maybe you feel like you're lifting that right hip bone up to get some length in that right quad, hip flexor area. Then you'll start to bring the hands back down to the mat, maybe coming up a little bit higher on the hands, so fingertips are blocks. Back toes tucked, lift the back knee, straighten the front leg. And this side can be different, so maybe the hands aren't in the same exact spot they were on the first side. You might even have a deeper bend in that left knee, especially if the back side of the left leg is really tight. Inhale forward to your lunge, hands to the mat, step back, downward facing dog. One more breath here. Inhale in through the nose. Back out through the nose. Next, inhale, glide forward to plank pose, stacking the shoulders over the wrists. Feet are hip width distance apart. One forearm at a time, forearm plank. Bring the right hand in a little bit. Bring both feet over to the right. So both heels over to the right. Lift the left arm up. I'm keeping my feet staggered. It's a nice way to do a side plank. You're staying on the forearm. You're reaching up with the hips, getting as long as you can. So those legs are really long, tailbones pointing back behind you. You could turn that top palm to face forward and reach it up and over the ear. Maybe that'll give you more length in the left side body, which can be a nice stretch. Left forearm comes back down to the mat, back to forearm plank, feet hip width distance. Find your forearm plank. Then bring both heels over to the left. Left hand can come in as much as you want for that left shoulder. Right arm reaches up. It just gives you a little bit more space instead of having the hand going straight forward. Legs are long, hips lift. Push the mat away from you. Turn that right palm to face forward. Maybe reach the right arm up and over the ear. See if that gives you more length and a nice stretch on the right side body. Right forearm comes back down to the mat, back to forearm plank, one hand at a time, plank pose, knees down to the mat, tabletop, all fours. And we'll come into cat-cow. So on the inhale, reach the heart forward, lift the tail. And on the exhale, round the spine, chin in toward the chest. Keep going on your own, several rounds. Keep the breath long, so you should be going slow as you go back and forth. You can add movement, take away movement. This is all yours. Let's do one more round forward and back. Take your time. And you'll find your way back to a neutral spine. From here, walk the hands forward so they're ahead of the shoulders. Tuck the toes, lift the hips up and back. Downward facing dog again. Bend the knees. Look forward to the top of the mat. Step, walk. Bring the feet up between the hands. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. 2 more like this. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Last one. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. This time we're coming all the way up. Circle the arms all the way up to standing. Hands come together overhead, down in front of the heart. Inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, bend the knees. Hands come down to the mat. Step back to plank pose. On your exhale, shift forward onto the toes. Bend the elbows halfway, chaturanga, cobra, or up dog. You're ready for up dog in terms of back bends, but skip it if you'd rather do cobra. Exhale back, downward facing dog. Bend the knees, look forward, step, walk, hop, bring the feet up between the hands, nice and light, as quietly as you can. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Arms come all the way up to standing, hands come together overhead, down in front of the heart. Inhale, reaching the arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, bend the knees, hands come down to the mat, step back to plank pose, shift forward onto the toes, point the elbows straight back, chaturanga, tops of the feet, cobra or up dog. Exhale back, down dog. One more of those. Bend the knees, look forward, bring the feet up to the hands. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Inhale, circle the arms all the way up to standing. Hands come together overhead, down in front of the heart. Inhale, reach the arms up. Exhale, forward fold. Inhaling up halfway. Exhale, bend the knees, hands come down to the mat. Step back to plank pose. Shift forward onto the toes, bend the elbows halfway, chaturanga. Come up for your back bend. Legs are long and strong. Exhale back, downward facing dog. Right leg lifts up and back, 3-legged down dog. All 5 toes point down. Bring the knee to the nose, scoop the belly round the spine, try to stack the shoulders over the wrists. Set that right foot forward up between the hands. Hop the back foot in, setting up for warrior 1. So feet are heel to heel, probably wider for most of us. Reach the arms forward all the way up. And it's about stability with the spacing between the feet. So most of us, if we go heel to heel, it's a little too narrow and you just won't have your balance. So feel free to widen the stance until you feel like it's still narrow, but you can stay upright without too much of a problem with the feet underneath you. So building that foundation from the soles of the feet all the way up through the fingertips. Reach the arms back behind you. 2 options here. You can either squeeze the palms of the hands together. If it's easy, you can interlace the fingers behind the back, lifting and spreading up through the chest, and then folding forward, humble warrior. You want those knuckles to go up and back. That's the shoulder opening, but we want the shoulders to stay away from the ears at the same time. Chest can rest on the thigh. or you can bring it inside the thigh if you want a deeper hip opening. That right hip is right behind the right knee, not going out to the right. With control, release the clasp of the hands, reach the arms forward all the way up, Virabhadrasana 1. Back leg is strong. You're spinning that inner left thigh back behind you. Lift the belly, maybe lift the chest, maybe the gaze goes up. And there is a back bend here. You find one that feels good in your body, where you're maximizing space in the lower back. And next, exhale, bring the hands back down to the mat. Make your way back to downward facing dog. You can just step straight back. You could take a vinyasa if you want one. Those are up to you. We use those vinyasas during our Surya A's to warm up. And then after that, you really just choose when you feel like they're feeding your practice and not draining it. Left leg reaches up and back, three-legged down dog. Bring the knee to the nose, scoop the belly around the spine. Step that left foot all the way through to the top of the mat. Hop the back foot in. Reach the arms forward all the way up. Warrior 1. As you spin that inner right thigh back behind you, lift the belly, lift the chest, maybe the gaze. Keep that lunge in the front knee. Keep the space in the lower back. Gaze goes forward. If you lifted it, reach the arms back behind you. One finger over if you're interlacing. Stretch the arms back behind you, leading with the heart. Humble warrior. Bowing slowly. Figuring out where the chest should go, either lightly on top of the thigh or inside the thigh. Shoulders away from the ears as you let the knuckles hang back to open up the shoulders. Then slowly start to reach the arms forward, all the way back up. Virabhadrasana 1, forward facing warrior. Chest is facing forward, hips are trying to face forward. Next, exhale, bring the hands down to the mat, back to downward facing dog. Be happy here or take a vinyasa. Start to bend the knees, look forward, step, walk, lightly hop, feet come up between the hands. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Bend the knees, sit back, chair pose. Weights in the heels of the feet, chest is lifted. Come all the way up to standing, hands come together, down in front of the heart. Tadasana, mountain pose, arms down by the sides. It's like you're trying to spread the feet or spread the mat with the feet, but still pressing down into the inner edges of the feet. Inner thighs spin back behind you, belly lifts, chest lifts, shoulders away from the ears. Find that focal point, your drishti, straight in front of you. Start to shift the weight over to the right foot. Lift the left heel up. Stay here. You're hugging that outer right hip in tight. And then see if you can stay with your focal point. Bring that left knee up toward the chest. So you're lifting the left leg. Once it comes up toward the chest, grab onto the shin and you can hug it in. And then notice if that left sit bone started to lift up higher than the right. You might need to lower it and stay strong on that right inner thigh. Extend that left leg forward. You can grab onto the back of the thigh, interlacing the fingers, still keeping the chest lifted. And just think about stretching that left leg, the back side of the left leg, using the top side of the leg to keep the leg lifted. Can we keep the left leg right where it is? Just reach the arms up overhead. So now you're really using the quad. Left foot steps down next to the right foot. Bend the knees, sit back, chair pose, opening up the chest, especially that part right behind the chest, the thoracic spine. Exhale, forward fold. Let that go. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fingertips to the mat. Step the left foot back behind you. A really long runner's lunge. Chest is reaching forward. Then hop the back foot in just until you can seal the whole foot down on the mat. Straighten the front leg. Fold over the front leg. So pyramid pose, Parsvottanasana. Hands can walk back just like we did before in the modified pyramid pose, or hands can walk forward. Blocks are great too for this pose. Let the head and the neck go. Bring the hands underneath the shoulders. Start to put a bend in that front knee. Reach the arms forward all the way up, warrior one. Squaring the chest and the hips as best you can. Arms reach back behind you. Interlace the fingers the most comfortable way. And press the knuckles back, lifting the chest. Fold forward, humble warrior. And you can see the toes. Try not to use them so much, especially if they're turning white. All right, slowly start to release the arms. Bring them forward all the way back up. Warrior one. Hands come back down to the mat. Step back to plank pose. Hold plank pose. One forearm at a time, forearm plank. This time you could bring the feet all the way together. It's up to you. Both heels go over to the left, stacking the feet, or you can keep staggered feet. Right arm reaches up. Left hand can still come in if you wanted to for that left shoulder. Keep the hips lifted high. Turn that right palm to face forward. Reach the right arm up and over the ear. Back to forearm side plank. Forearm plank, both forearms down on the mat, one hand at a time, plank pose, downward facing dog. Bend the knees, look forward, bring the feet up to the hands. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Chair pose. Bend the knees, reach the arms up. Noticing that space behind the chest. We're getting in there every time we go through this. And this is kind of our benchmark pose to see how it's changing. Come all the way up to standing. Hands come together, down in front of the heart. Tadasana, mountain pose. Find your focal point. Find even on the legs and the feet. Keep the chest lifted. Shift the weight over to the left foot, lift the right heel. Here's your opportunity to hug that outer left hip in and lift the lower belly. Keep the chest lifted. Just bring the knee up, right knee up as high as you can. Grab onto the front of the shin and then level off the sit bone. So that right hip might need to lower. Extend the right leg forward, grab on underneath the thigh, just pressing out with the foot to keep the chest lifted. Left thigh, that standing leg is pressing back. Can you keep the right leg right where it is? Reach the arms all the way up. Right foot steps next to the left foot. Keep the chest lifted as you bend the knees, sit back, chair pose. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fingertips to the mat. Right foot steps way back. Runner's lunge. You want a long stride. Hop the back foot in until you can seal the heel down. Squaring the hips forward, straightening the front leg. Fold over the front leg. Parsvottanasana, pyramid pose. Figure out where you want the hands. Forward for more, back for a little less, or blocks underneath the hands. But you want the hands to touch something. So if the hands don't easily touch the mat, grab something. Okay, Come up halfway with the chest, bend that left knee forward, reach the arms forward all the way up, warrior one. Lift the chest, send that right inner thigh straight back, keep everything pointing forward, but the gaze could go up if you're feeling comfortable with that today. Gaze comes back forward, reach the arms back behind you, interlace the fingers, one finger over, press the knuckles back, fold forward, humble warrior. Take your time as you bow forward, find where you want the chest, keep that outer left hip hugging in so it doesn't swing out to the left. Let the head and the neck go, keep the shoulders away from the ears. Back to warrior one, take your time, release the interlacing of the fingers as you rise all the way up again. Keep lifting the heart up toward the sky, that right inner thigh spinning back behind you at the same time. Hands come back down to the mat. Step back to plank pose, feet hip width distance apart, one forearm at a time, forearm plank. Keep the feet hip width distance a little wider, or maybe the feet come all the way together. You roll the heels over to the right, forearm side plank. Right hand can come in a little bit, hips lift. Turn that left palm to face forward. Maybe you stretch the arm up and over the ear, getting into the left side body. Back to forearm plank, separate the feet hip width, one hand at a time, plank pose, down dog. Bend the knees, look forward, walk, step, hop, feet come up between the hands. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Bend the knees, sit back, chair pose, see what's happening in the upper back. All the way up to standing, hands come together, down in front of the heart. Tadasana, mountain pose. Shift the weight over to the right foot. Lift the left heel so you can hug that outer right hip in and lift the belly and the chest. Left knee lifts up. Grab on underneath the left thigh. Extend that left leg forward. Reach the arms up. See if you can keep the left leg right where it is. See if we can come into warrior three. Take your time. Hands can come together down in front of the heart. Slowly start to hover that left heel just above the mat, keeping the legs straight. And then reach the chest forward, still pressing that left leg back behind you, coming into your warrior three. Chest is reaching forward. Hands come down to the mat, standing splits. Let the head and the neck go. You're still lifting from that inner left thigh. Bend the standing leg, reach back with the ball of the back foot, runner's lunge. So you have that bend in the front knee, chest is reaching forward. Just as a transition, you'll hop the back foot in, sealing the heel, warrior one. Reach the arms forward, all the way up. Square the hips, square the chest. Maybe the gaze starts to lift. If your lower back's okay with it, you could bring the hands together in your warrior one. Skip it if it takes away space. Then bringing the gaze forward, separating the hands, reach the arms back behind you, interlace the fingers, humble warrior. Back up, warrior one. Hands come back down to the mat. Step back to plank pose. One forearm at a time, forearm plank. Maybe feet together, heels go over to the left, stacking the feet. Left hand can come in, right arm reaches up. Turn that right palm to face forward. Stretch the right arm up and over the ear. Get long in the legs. Right forearm comes back down to the mat, feet separated hip width distance apart. Set the hips down to the mat, tops of the feet to the mat, Sphinx pose. Chest reaches forward. It's like you're trying to slide the mat back behind you as you reach the heart forward. Legs are active, so those outer ankles are not going out. They're just hugging in toward the body, helping you point the toes straight back. Looking down at the mat, tuck the toes underneath you, fire up the legs, core, outer hips, lift the hips up, forearm plank, one hand at a time, plank pose, downward facing dog, hips go up and back. Bend the knees, look forward, bring the feet up to the hands. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Utkatasana chair pose, arms up, hips down. All the way up to standing, hands come together, down in front of the heart. Tadasana mountain pose. Find your focal point, shift the weight over to the left foot, lift the right heel, right knee comes up toward the chest. Hang on to that right knee, level off the hips. Then extend that right leg forward, grabbing onto the back of the thigh. Right leg is strong. You're pressing out through both feet. Reach the arms all the way up. Keep that leg lifted. Hands come together down in front of the heart. Slow warrior 3. Keep the right leg straight. Hover it over the mat. As you start to use that right inner thigh to lift it back behind you, still pressing away with the leg at the same time. Chest is reaching forward. You're trying not to open up that right hip, so all 5 toes point down toward the mat. Hands come down toward the mat, fold over that left leg, standing splits. And even here, the left hip can swing out to the left, so it feels like it's left of the foot. See if you can stack the left hip right over the left foot. Stretch that right leg way back behind you. Runner's lunge. You want a long stride because you're going to shorten it. Chest is reaching forward. Then hop the back foot in. Seal the heel down. Warrior 1. Reach the arms forward all the way up. Belly lifts, chest lifts, maybe the gaze lift. Maybe the hands come together. Gaze comes forward, separate the arms. Hands go back behind you, interlacing the fingers, one finger over, stretch the knuckles back, and fold forward, humble warrior. All the way back up, warrior 1, legs stay the same. It's just the upper body that's moving. And bring the hands back down to the mat. Step back to plank pose. One forearm at a time, forearm plank. Feet can come together. Roll the heels over to the right. Left arm reaches up, forearm side plank. Lift the hips up. Get long in the legs. Turn that left palm to face forward. Stretch the arm over the ear. Forearm plank. Feet hip width distance apart. Get the length, then set the hips down to the mat. Tops of the feet to the mat. Reach the heart forward. Belly lifts. Chest is going forward. You're broadening across the collarbones. Looking down the bridge of the nose. Look down at the mat, tuck the toes underneath you, fire up the legs, outer hips hug in, belly lifts, press down into the forearms and the hands. Then all you do is lift the hips. That's the only thing that comes up last. One hand at a time, plank pose, downward facing dog. Get the shoulders way back toward the hips, away from the ears. Then bend the knees, look forward, bring the feet up to the hands. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Come back to chair pose, Utkatasana. All the way up to standing, hands come together, down in front of the heart. Arms down by the sides, Tadasana. Shift the weight over to the right foot, lift the left knee up. Grab onto the left knee with just the right hand. So you're coming into a twist. Left arm reaches back behind you. You can just stand tall here, looking forward. If you feel pretty good, you could extend that left leg forward, grabbing onto the outer edge of the left foot, standing as tall as you can. And that left leg can have a deep bend in it, but you're grabbing the outer edge of that foot. So reaching way over to the left. Chest is lifted. You're reaching back with the left arm at the same time. Gaze is forward if you changed it. Reach the arms all the way up. Extend that left leg forward, warrior three. Hands can come together down in front of the heart as you start to shift back to your warrior three. Bend the standing leg, reach back with the ball, the back foot. Hands come down to the mat. Back knee comes down to the mat. Shift the hips back, coming into half splits. So you're lifting the toes on the right foot. You can push it forward. Chest is reaching forward. If you want to take a fuller version of splits, blocks are really nice for that. So if you have 2 blocks, I would highly recommend it. You don't need to come all the way down. We all just work with whatever we have going on. So try moving the back leg first, as far back as you can get it. The blocks will need to walk in so they stay underneath the shoulders, keeping the chest lifted. Feet and legs are still hip width distance apart. You don't want to go wider than that. Chest is lifted. If the right hip is pretty low to the mat, you could put a block underneath it or the thigh, and that gives you enough support so that you can lift the arms up. Chest is lifted, outer hips hugging in. Skip this part if that hip's not supported. Hands come back down to the mat. If you're on a block, get it out from underneath you. Start to bring that back knee in, coming back to your half splits, reaching the chest forward. Then shift onto the sole, the right foot. Blocks can go off to the side if you're using them. Tuck the back toes, lift the back knee, step that left foot forward up to meet the right foot. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold. Bend the knees, sit back, chair pose. Keep the chest lifted. Feel all that space you're making in the back today. Come all the way up to standing. Hands come together, down in front of the heart. Tadasana, mountain pose. Stand tall. Shift the weight over to the left foot. Lift the right knee up toward the chest. Left hand, right knee, opening the chest to the right. Reach back with that right arm. Hips are level. Stay right here, hanging onto the knee, or maybe reach down, grab for the outer edge of the right foot, outer edge. Stand tall. That lifted leg can be bent or some version of straight. Gaze comes back forward. Reach the arms all the way up. Hands come together down in front of the chest. Warrior three. Take your time. Bend the standing leg. Reach back with the ball of the right foot. Hands come down to the mat. Back knee comes down to the mat. Untuck the toes. Shift the hips back. Half split. So you lift the toes on the left foot. Push the heel forward. If you want to play with the fuller version of splits, grab your blocks, one under each hand. Whatever height makes the most sense. You might be higher or lower than, well, you shouldn't be lower. You should be this medium height or the tallest height, but probably medium. Tuck the back toes, start to move that back leg back as far as you can, walk the blocks back, and then you can start to shift that front leg forward, but it's back leg first. Chest is lifted. If you're feeling like you're down pretty low and all you need is a block to support the hip or the thigh, try that. Belly hugs in, arms can lift up, chest lifts. And there's still a scissoring of the inner thighs. You're trying to keep the hips side by side. Hands come back down if they're lifted. Get that block out from underneath you if you're using it. Tuck the back toes. Start to scoot that back knee forward until you make your way to half splits again. Blocks and hands will need to walk forward. Then come onto the sole of the left foot. Tuck the back toes, lift the back knee, set the blocks off to the side, and that right foot steps up to meet the left foot. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, fold, chair pose. This is our last one. So see how the body's feeling in this last one. Make sure you can see all 10 toes, hips lift, chest lift, or hips lower, chest lifts. Then exhale, forward fold. Inhale up halfway. Exhale, bend the knees, bring the hands down to the mat, step back to plank pose. Hold plank pose, get as long as you can, then come down to the forearms, forearm plank. Hips come down, sphinx pose. Tops of the feet touch down, chest reaches forward. Then right forearm in front of the face, bend the left forearm in front of the face, bend that right leg, reach back for the right foot, coming back into that quad opening, but you are keeping the chest lifted. Push that right leg away from you, straightening the arm, getting into the shoulder, lifting the chest. Left forearm stays down for now. And start to release, we'll switch sides. Right forearm in front of the face, reach back, grab for that left foot. Keep the chest lifted. You can bring the foot in toward the glute to start so you get into the legs. Then start to push the foot away from you. You'll feel the chest lift. Then release that left foot, stack the hands. Rest the forehead on top of the hands. And you can move the hips side to side here, just leaving the tops of the feet on the mat. Sometimes that feels good in the lower back. If it doesn't, then just hold still. Okay, from here, lift the head and the chest, bend both legs, reach back, see if you can grab the feet or the ankles. And the knees stay hip width distance apart. So you don't want them too close together, and you also don't want them to splay out. So from here, press the feet into the hands back into the feet, and you can either flex the feet or point the feet. And then maybe you start to lift the chest. Maybe the thighs lift too, but you're pushing the legs away from you and the hands are bringing them in at the same time. So similar to what we were doing before, Dhanurasana. Slowly set the thighs back down to the mat. Feet come back down to the mat. Make a pillow with the hands. Rest the forehead down. You can move the hips side to side. We'll play with that one more time, and then that's it. That's our final back bend. So when you're ready, lift the head and the chest. Start to bend the legs, heels come in toward the glutes. Reach back with the arms. See if you can grab the feet, the ankles. You could also use a strap if you're close and it's just not connecting. Feet flexed or feet pointed. It's just changing what muscle groups you're getting into. Both are okay. Lift and spread the chest. Maybe the thighs lift at the same time. Lower back long, chest is open, shoulders away from the ears. Some of you could probably rock a little bit. Slowly release, thighs come down, rest the feet, rest the head, back down onto the hands. Feeling that heart rate pick up. Bend the legs so you bring the feet up, and then you can move the feet side to side like windshield wipers if it doesn't bother your lower back. Feet come back down to the mat. Bring the hands by the lower ribs. Come up to hands and knees. Take child's pose, but let's bring the knees and the feet all the way together for your child's pose. Bending the knees, arms can reach out in front of you. Forehead comes down to the mat. And you can let the elbows be heavy. So let them come down to the mat. You can even stack the hands if that feels good. So you don't need to have the arms all the way stretched out in front of you, keeping it a more active child's pose. Instead, we want one that's a little bit more passive. This should feel good on the lower back, keeping the knees and the feet together in your child's pose so the torso is completely supported on the thighs. And then from here, you'll keep the head down on the mat. Well, actually, no, lift the head just enough so you can tuck the toes underneath you and you're coming back into that child's pose, forehead down, but now the toes are tucked. Reach back for the heels. And then hanging onto the heels, keeping the head down on the mat, lift the hips up, finding a rounding of the upper back. So this is rabbit pose. And it's a nice way to open up the upper back after you've been warm and strengthening and opening up that area for pretty much this entire flow. And gently release the feet, bring the hands to the mat, lift the head and the chest, feet come over to one side, and you'll come to seated with the legs out in front of you. Once you do that, bring the sole of the left foot in. And once you get it in, it's better to use the hands to bring it in as far as it'll go. Fist width distance between the foot and the thigh. Left hand back behind you. Wrap the right arm around this bent leg, and you're pressing that left knee into the right forearm and vice versa. Sit up as tall as you can and start to gaze over that left shoulder. Right toes point up. So this is your twist to release that deep back bend. And then admiring all the different ways we can position the body, hook arms and legs to find these shapes. To help us move everything on the inside. All right, bring the gaze back forward, slowly turn the chest to point forward, extend that left leg forward, grab onto the back of the right thigh, start to bring the right foot in, maybe use the hands, fist width distance between the foot and the thigh so they're not touching. Right fingertips back behind you. Wrap this left arm around the bent knee. You're pressing down into both sit bones evenly, and the knees going into the left arm is going back into the knee, left toes point up. Gaze over that right shoulder. Start to bring the gaze back forward. Slowly unwind the chest, extend the right leg forward. And then bring both feet in. You can bring the feet out wide, hands back behind you. Bring the knees side to side like windshield wipers. And then next time the knees end up over to the left, stay there. Try to get the knees down as low as you can without too much force. And then you'll take this right hand back behind you, bring the right hand forward between the legs. So now you're facing forward, the chest is pointing over that left knee, coming into a 90-90 shape. So if you look at the feet and the legs, they're in a 90-degree angle. Left knee right in front of the hip, right knee right outside of that hip. And then you're working to get that right hip down toward the mat, chest upright. You might be leaning way over to the left. That's fine. But you're pressing that outer left knee down to the mat and the inner right knee down to the mat at the same time. And then to come out, this right hand comes back behind you and you're back in that wide-legged stance with the soles of the feet on the mat. Bring the hips, the knees side to side to come back into windshield wipers, still sitting reclined. Next time both knees end up over to the right, stay there and then start to work those knees down toward the mat, still staying in that reclined position. And then once you feel like you have the legs set up, bring that left hand forward between the legs, sitting up tall, revolving the chest forward over that right knee, working to get that left hip down toward the mat. It probably won't touch. Outer right knee presses down, inner left knee presses down, chest lifts, and you're trying to lean over to the right as little as possible. Left hand reaches back behind you, knees come up, and then bring the feet in so they're hip width distance apart. Come on down onto your back. Rest the head, knees in toward the chest. Hug the right knee in, extend the left leg out in front of you. And then extend the right leg up, grab onto the back of the right thigh, or walk the hands up the leg, bringing the leg in closer. Right knee comes in toward the chest, set the right foot down onto the mat, hug the left knee in toward the chest, extend the right leg out in front of you. Lift the left leg up, grabbing onto the back of the left thigh, or walking the hands up the leg, bringing the leg in closer. Left knee comes in toward the chest. Bring the right knee in too. So both knees in, you can rock side to side. Start to close the eyes. Come into stillness. Take a deep breath in through the nose. Hold it at the very top. On the exhale, Shavasana or your seated meditation. Legs extend out in front of you. Try to move any props or anything out of the way that you're not using. Make sure the shoulder blades are underneath you, which sometimes means lifting up the chest and then bringing it back down again. Palms face up, or you could have hands on the body, left hand on the heart, right hand on the belly, whichever one feels more calming. Let go of that breath control and start to drop in to your final relaxation pose. You'll start to wiggle the fingers and the toes, getting some movement back into the body if you're in Shavasana. You can stretch the arms overhead, getting long, feeling all that space you made with your practice today, your physical practice. And then start to walk the feet in, bending the knees, and rolling over onto your right side, cradling the head and the arm, keeping the eyes closed. Using the left hand, bring yourself up to your meditation seat, whatever that looks like. Just really a matter of comfort more than anything else, so that you can be still. Sitting up tall with the eyes closed, bring the hands together in front of you. Closing our practice together, bow the head, take a moment, honor and acknowledge your heart and your spirit, as well as everyone around you. Bring the head back up, blink open the eyes. Namaste. Thank you. A lot of big poses today. We did forearm stuff, Dhanurasana, splits. Hope that all felt good. Sometimes it's really nice when you get the body warmed up enough to where you can explore bigger poses like those.